strip is yellow. I've never seen this brand. That's our first task on the EJ, is to get all of the paint off. And then we'll sandblast it. Yeah, look at that. Oops, oh well, doesn't matter if it goes everywhere, it's all got to come off. La da 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 da. Sorry, music felt appropriate for stripping. Catch up in a second when this is hopefully a lot closer to being bare metal. Interesting stuff. We can't get the normal stuff we use because COVID and supplies from Melbourne. So we'll just work with what we got. Whoa, there it is, dribbling down the side. Not a great action shot, but at least it's something. So what we've found with Paint Stripper, well I have found with Paint Stripper over the years, is it works mint on taking off 2-pack paint, but it just turns acrylic paint to mush. Just goes to a runny mess. Now, that is in fact red lead paint, and I don't particularly feel like sanding that off and potentially breathing that in. I don't really want an extra dose of cancer before I'm likely to get the cancer I'm already destined to get. So I'm just going to keep paint stripping this to try and get as much of this acrylic paint off, because they did paint cars in acrylic back then. As much of it off as possible prior to blasting. I know we're up against a wall at the moment, so it's a bit hard, but we've got to start somewhere, and this is going to be the start for the EJ. Alright, so it was just for the last one, we were paint stripping. The original paint has proven to be incredibly difficult to remove off this car with that paint stripper. I haven't tried it with my normal one, but we can't seem to get it at the moment, so unfortunately we're just sort of wearing respirators and sanding some of it off. So the paint stripper got a good chunk of it off, but it could not remove the red lead at all. So I've had the old boy doing some paint scraping with stuff while I was working on the Landau bonnet, which you'll see in another video probably. Everything sort of works together, but we're getting there. We're still trying to get the body shell in bare metal. I've got to get that bumper bar off, probably take the boot lid off, but yeah, we're going to try and get it all bare metal and sandblast it, but I've got to fix my sandblaster as it broke today. So that's a bit of a bummer, but we're still trying to get it bare metaled and then sandblast it and get all the nooks and crannies off so that it's much nicer. This quarter panel's had a bit of a whack at some point in time. It's a little sad, but luck of the draw really. So we're just progressing, slow going basically. So you'll catch up probably a week's worth of footage in one video. So I'll catch up in a second with what's next. So I'm adding this into the video. You know, you might occasionally catch this old fella in the background of a video. He's actually kind of handy on occasions. I'm sticking this into the EJ video because you'll see he's doing some of the work in the background. His name is George. He's my father. He helps me with the business. We run it together. He does all the paperwork and dealing with customers. So if you want a booking or something, you have to deal with him because it's not my league. I just fix the cars. But he spent, how long were you in the Air Force for?
46 years in defence.
In 46 years in the Defence Force. How long were you actually in the Air Force for?
25 years in the Permanent Air Force, 10 years in the Air Force Reserve, and I worked in Defence Material Organisation in pyrotechnics, countermeasures, guided weapons, and eventually finished up on the Air Warfare Destroyer before I retired.
Ah yes, and you're still not technically retired because you're working for me.
Yeah, and probably the highlight of my Air Force career was a ride in the backseat of Mirage in Butterworth.
Yes, so he got a ride in a 2-seater Mirage in what year?
1971.
In 1971 he got a backseat ride in a incredibly fast fighter jet, which would have been incredible. Yeah, so it's all downhill from there. Everything shit.
Right, well I'm working on getting the paint off the back of this car. It's actually, despite how it looks, I think it's got some good metal.
Yeah, we're progressing along quite nicely. I don't think my acquisition from old Heinz's yard in Erupta was that bad. It did take 3 trips through that yard to find a car that was decent. But I thought I'd just introduce this guy because he floats around in the background and he's got a pretty cool story. Been in the Air Force forever. He does metal mounting as a hobby. He's very, very good at it. And he's kind of handy to keep around in case I decide to have another stroke or something.
And I do all the trips to the paint shop.
He does all the running around and all the stuff. So yeah, I thought one day I'd like to have him explain some of his stories of what he got up to in the Air Force back when he was a young'un, but he refuses to actually tell me those. Not refuse. But some of them are actually really cool, like watching aircraft crash and things like that. In not the death-defying kind of way. But I thought I'd just sneak this video in a little bit. So he's going to be taking some of the paint off in the background while I'm working on other stuff. That way, because paint stripping is not a exciting...
We have to be very cautious because under this is red lead.
Yeah.
This is the primer of the day and it's toxic. And also you'll notice that because the car was made in the days before bog, everything is lead filled. So
yes, there's lead joining everywhere.
This is all, you know.
Yeah, so the quarter panel, the back panel actually joins through the quarter panel through here. But yes, he just does all the paint stripping and the removal because it's not a difficult task, put it that way. I haven't trained him enough to do rust repair yet. But yeah, I'll just leave it here and I'll catch you up in a second when we have the next bit of this video. Alrighty, just a little tidbit on the EJ. It's a bit of a talk about bog. This is really, really, really old bog. This bog, I reckon, has been in this car for at least 30 years, I reckon. And has shown no signs of moisture getting below it. No signs of delaminating. It's incredible. People badmouth bog, or plastic filler, or whatever you want to call it, Bondo, so much. It is not that bad, and you'd be horrified at how many really expensive name brand shops use the stuff. When applied properly, it is perfectly good and will not fall off your panel. Thusly, here's a fine example of bog that was obviously applied properly to the right consistency and has been on the side of this car in all weather, because I know this car sat out in a paddock for probably at least 25 years and it hasn't lifted at all. So I'm not trying to say how amazing bog is, but there's a fine example of how long it will stay on something if everything is done properly. And that bog appears to be directly over bare metal. Interesting, hey? So I'm just under here using some flamage to try and heat up the bolts to the point where they actually undo. The idea is not to actually nuke them to the point where they turn to liquid, but just to break the rust free. I'd like to save the bolts as best I can. Quite hard to film this and do the job, but it is kind of working. People use blowtorch or those little butane bottles. They get things hot, but this thing gets them really hot. There you can see it glowing now. So I'll stop filming it. Hey, we finally did it. Well, he did it. Anyway, I've been doing other stuff. But the bumper bar is off for the first time in 1, 2, carry the 3, probably 50 plus years. I don't think it's ever been off this car. And the joys of using the oxy torch and heating it up, not one of the bolts broke, which is fan-smeggin-tastic. That quarter panel is looking a little bit sad. There is quite a bit of bog in it, and I actually reckon, at a quick glance, I'm going to have to put my Porta Power and a block of wood on the chassis rail and push that wheel arch out. I think that it's, well, actually you can see that it's bent, but the whole side of this quarter panel has been wiped out, and I think they've sort of fixed it, but I think I'm going to have to push that wheel arch out, because I don't reckon, if we go to the other one, Yeah, see how it doesn't dip back in, it sort of goes curves and then the wheel arch kicks out, whereas this side it sort of comes down and kicks back in and then kicks out. So when I was under the car I could see that it was bent, so I'm going to have to get in there and a block of wood and press out that wheel arch because it's just too far in, and then figure out where we're going from there. Yes, alright, I think we're making good progress on it. I'll probably do a little bit more filming, maybe one more segment, and then I'll wrap it up for a video, I reckon. Alright, so we're making some progress. All the bog out of this wheel arch is out of the dog leg. Look at that dent. Woo-wee. So I said to the old boy before, what we're going to do is we're going to do this in stages. Like stage 1 we'll call all the window channel and up to the roof, down to the end of the dog leg, around the wheel arch, the boot channels, all that will be bare metaled and sandblasted and epiteched to seal it up, and then we'll turn the car around. We were just getting the bumper bar and the number plate off, and as a bit of a quick looky-loo, I was looking at the beaver panel, which, if you know these cars, you'll know they're renowned for being rusty, and if you were that way inclined, you could probably, like, it's very solid. Like, it's only got a couple of little holes in it. I'm probably going to put a fresh one on it, because it's dented right here, and it's actually dented all the way along, but considering how bad these can get, it's just, I shouldn't do that too much, it'll hurt my hand. Surprisingly solid. So normally they chew out in here as well. It's not. The boot, yeah, the quarter panel's a little bit holy, but not too bad. And normally these cars, this day and age, the boot floor is non-existent. It's even still got the peg for the spare wheel. I mean, when I took the petrol tank out, all of the bolts undid, which was just mind-blowing. I want to try and get some of this original colour too when I paint the boot, because I heard rumours that when Holden were doing this, it's all of the leftover paint for any particular day just chucked in a pot and some black thrown in, and it sort of mixes up into this sort of bluey grey colour. So that's, I'd like to get it all done. I'd like the boot to be painted back in its original colour, but I've got to do some, because we can see that this is bent here. I sort of think it might have been done by a bit of a backyard when this was repaired. I reckon they've probably put a scissor jack or something in here and it's pushed this in as they've pushed that out. So I think I'm going to have to, I've got to definitely pull that wheel arch out, and certainly some of that. It's all winky wonky. But if you know EJHs, you'll know that they usually rust out real bad. I mean, I think this rust is from this accident. It's actually split all the way along here. But just look how solid it is. It's even got an inner. I mean, the sill panels are gone, but I think this car actually has less rust in it than most. So I consider this a win. Some of it's bad, but I've seen worse. So I think this is going to be a relatively easy car to fix, actually. Most of the back section is pretty good. I've got a couple of holes here, some water sitting in that pan I've already done. The pans aren't that bad. Like, you go, oh my god, that's a lot of rust, but that pretty much does all of it. So it's just 3 floor pans, a little bit of inner sill panel work, the plenum chamber, some roof rust, corners of the dash, pillars, bottoms. The Y-frames I've got are spotless. I've got a beautiful bonnet, beautiful boot lid. I've got a perfect front driver's door. That door just needs a skin. I'll just chuck a beaver panel on it, one that's straight, and I think we'll be plodding along quite nicely. The colour this car is going to end up being, because this is actually for the missus, even though it's mine, I'm going to paint this car, I believe the colour is called Panola Rose. It's actually going to be rose pink, this car, when it's done. I think that would be awesome. And it'll be, I'll keep the wheels white, the roof white, but the body colour will change from Nepean Grey to Panola Rose. I think it'll be awesome. It'll look it'll just look cool because it's a very rare colour. You don't see many in that colour, and I think long term I think it'll be quite cool to have around and drive around in. So I'm going to actually wrap this video up here, and that's not a lot for one video, one episode, episode 1 for the EJ, but we're just going to keep stripping it, and then we're going to start tackling some of the rust, so stay tuned.